CarcassPresents.com. Back with you today with a very special guest, one of the founding members and guitar player for the band Carcass. I'm joined today by Mr. Bill Steer. Bill, how you doing today?
I'm all right, thank you.
Fantastic. All right, you guys have a new album out late last year on Nuclear Blast Records, the album Surgical Steel. I was surprised personally by the overall positive reaction, kind of that was unanimous from people. Did it surprise you that's the same unanimous reaction, especially given the rampant negativity that seems to kind of infest the metal world?
Yeah, yeah, you're right. There's a lot of that going on. I wouldn't say it was quite unanimous because obviously there are plenty of negative comments out there if you look for them. But yeah, it was really shocking to us just how positive the overall reaction was. I just really wasn't ready for that. I was bracing myself for about a 50-50 reaction. And in the end, I'd say it was more like 90-10 or something. So yeah, it was great.
It definitely seemed. I don't think I saw pretty much any major publication that had anything bad to say about it or any major criticisms. It was up there. You know, it was Decibel's #1 album, and I think a lot of at least in the top 5 on a lot of year-end lists of 2013. So that's kind of got to be. I know you don't create music for accolades and stuff like that, but it's probably got to be a bit rewarding, though.
Yeah, it definitely is, because we didn't set our expectations too high. In fact, I don't even know what our expectations were as such. We were confident that it was a valid record, otherwise we wouldn't have even dared to push it out there. But as you said, given the climate with, I don't know, it's not so much actual reality, I think. It's more that online world of people who don't necessarily have a lot to do besides slagging everything that comes their way, I guess. But yeah, I'm impressed. We've got nothing to complain about. I mean, we've been very fortunate.
Now, was there any, you kind of spoke that, that's something that is rewarding and kind of surprised you. Was there any maybe apprehension or trepidation when it came to making a new album? Were you at all fearful that people would actually, just kind of pass it off as not being relevant and just kind of it would just be forgotten?
No, I mean, we couldn't really allow our minds to even go in that direction. Otherwise, we would have been frozen with fear, I guess the way we started it was looking back, ideal, because we hadn't told anybody we were writing material. So initially it was just Dan Wilding, our drummer, and myself in the rehearsal place. And then very shortly, Jeff came down and joined us. And it was a very dynamic vibe between the three of us. Every day we achieved something. We always came away with either an entire song or a good chunk of a song finished. And we believed in what we were doing. So, other people's expectations or opinions didn't enter into it until the thing was done, in all honesty. Once we had it mastered and ready to go, that was a scary time because, you're just bracing yourself for a load of flack, really.
So you guys had when you reformed first in late 2007 and kind of moving towards it, it was just, it was you, Mike Lamont, Jeff Walker, you guys, then Daniel Wilding. No, yeah, Daniel Wilding playing drums. Or Daniel Lanson, yeah, I'm sorry. You guys kind of doing the revival, kind of doing the reunion, playing the old material. Was there a definite dynamic switch when you guys brought the two new people in to kind of actually start the work on the album? Or what? I guess what would you say would be the main dynamic kind of shift that kind of happened?
Well, it was really just 3 people that played on the record. Ben wasn't in the group at that stage. Mm-hmm. We didn't actually decide on a second guitar player until, the beginning of last year, I guess. So the record was well and truly finished by that point. But with regards to the main thrust of your question, yeah, of course, very different dynamic, not just because of the change in personnel, but also because of the circumstances. Because when you go on a venture like this, making a new record, everything changes. you go from being a kind of, I don't know what the word is, almost like a touring nostalgia act to being a current concern. And there's a risk element to that, because if the record isn't considered to be good, you've ruined it for yourselves. But if people do like the record, then you've kind of validated your existence, and it's not just this kind of rehashed pantomime thing. So for me, it felt great, because I like to feel that there is some future, some way forward of whatever I'm doing. And just playing very old material with no new ingredient, that had limited appeal to me, and I'm sure Jeff felt the same way. So yeah, it was great fun doing the reunion gigs, but it did bother me that there didn't really seem to be a future for the band at that point. And as sad as it was to see Michael and Daniel go, the good side to it was it enabled Jeff and myself to get to this point where we could actually make an album, because it really wasn't a possibility up until the time that they left.
Well, that's good. At least you're able to, what if the agenda or what, the preconceived notion that you have that, you want to set forth still with the band, that you're able to kind of, we're able to move forward with that, with the addition. Like you said, it's not to take anything away from Michael or any of the guys, and I'm sure that you still, you're still on good terms with them, but it seems like there was two different directions when it came to what their idea of what Carcass should be in this day and age. Especially, I know Michael and Daniel are still quite active with Arch Enemy, so that would probably, I would assume, cause some friction. And I've read before that you said that as well. So
yeah, exactly. I think there's a limit to what any band can achieve if you have members who have priorities elsewhere. And luckily for us, we ended up selecting two guys to join us who don't have anything musically that matters more than this. So all of a sudden, all four people in the group prioritize Carcass. And also, as luck would have it, all four people live in the UK. So it's a completely different position for us, and it means we can actually practice and work on things. And I don't know, it just feels more like a group, to be honest with you.
Well, that's great. It just seems like the two of them coming in there just kind of just a nice breath of fresh air for just basically the whole situation.
Yeah.
So you guys got the Decibel Magazine Tour coming up, which is probably one of the most anticipated tours of the new year. And from what I've read from reviews from, some of the festivals you guys have played and the other club shows that you guys have played, great reception, again, with everything pretty much that you guys seemingly have been working on. So would you say there's a noticeable difference between a Carcass crowd today and, say, 20 years ago?
Yeah, there's more people. That's one thing. Let me think. I guess when we started getting back out there and playing shows, doing festivals and what have you, one of the common questions we got asked in interviews and so on was, what percentage of our audience was old school and what percentage was new people. And really, the front rows at all those festivals we did when we first came back, it was almost exclusively people who are far too young to have seen us the first time around. So, I mean, you can analyze that all you want, really, and I don't know exactly what to make of it, but the one thing that seemed clear to me was that while we'd been away, some of those old records had reached a new audience, and I don't know, I guess the albums took on a life of their own, which none of us would have expected. We still see the odd person from the old days coming to these shows, but it's not really as many as people think. Life goes on, and a lot of people don't consider music to be their most important issue in life, as they hit their late 30s or early 40s. Obviously, there's exceptions like myself, but it's quite understandable, if somebody's, knee-deep in family life and so forth, they're probably not bothered about going to a Carcass gig.
All those people who grow up and get real jobs and, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So, Well, I mean, speaking of Decibel Magazine, I'd say probably the editor, Albert Mudrian, is probably your number one biggest U.S. fan. So do you guys have plans to have him help sell merch or anything like that kind of planned? Or I know he's been a big champion of the band, and like you said, some of the albums, both two of the albums have been inducted into their Hall of Fame. And you've said before that you're not really much one to kind of, look back and kind of reminisce and stuff like that. Does that kind of, how do you kind of feel when somebody like that, still carrying a flag for this band years after they've been defunct, and also, calling something that you've done, historic or a classic or, something like that?
It's very flattering, obviously.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, needless to say, we've known Albert for a long time, and you could say we're friends. I mean, particularly the friendship between Albert and Jeff goes back a long way. But I also think the guy is first and foremost a critic, and he wouldn't hold back if he felt that the new record is crap. Or at least I hope not. Yeah, I mean, but as far as the old stuff, yeah, that's brilliant. Seeing it get that kind of accolade. But I feel like that's part of the bigger thing, because it wouldn't just be us. I mean, I'm sure people are also going back and listening to, for example, the early Death records or Entombed's Left Hand Path, things like that, and realizing how special those albums were and are still. That's not to take anything away from the bands that are out there now, from the new school, but it's definitely harder for them to leave their mark, because we were fortunate. We were in there at the very beginning of that scene. We didn't look at it that way at the time, but now, from this vantage point, it's quite clear that we were able to innovate because this was all fresh, and it isn't quite like that now.
It's very saturated now, I'd say, especially with, the way the internet kind of, can get music to people. So, I mean, when there's hundreds upon thousands of bands that all seemingly sound the same, kind of, sorting through all that just kind of becomes more trouble than it's worth.
Yeah, I guess.
Bill, we don't have a whole lot of time left with you. I just want to kind of a quick question for you. With all the reunion talk with now defunct bands, has there ever been any talk amongst you and the guys in any incarnation of the various forms of the Napalm Death lineups, talking about kind of doing a big revival show with the revolving door of people that have been in that band?
If there has been talk, I haven't heard any. I can't see how it would be possible, really, because everyone's just in different places. I don't mean just geographically, but also mentally and musically. I mean, if you look at the current Napalm lineup, I only actually played in the band with one of those people. So I have been at festivals where both bands have been playing, and people have said to get up and play with them. But that would feel incredibly forced because, as I said, I mean, we didn't actually ever share a stage together in the old days. The only person I could say that about would be Shane, obviously. And I don't know, it's a tricky one, that band, because there are so many branches of the family tree. But what I would say is, for the era of the band that I was involved in, the pivotal member, and I don't think anyone can dispute this, is Mick Harris. And yeah, I mean, really, I think in terms of getting a version of Napalm back together, he would have to be involved. And from what I understand, that isn't really that likely. So,
no, I've heard he wants pretty much nothing to do with it ever again. So
yeah, it might be that, or it might be more complicated because if a guy's been away from playing blast beats and very intense drumming for a number of years, it's really hard to get back into it. So even if he had the inclination, goodness, that's going to be a real uphill struggle to get back to that point. I'm sure that the present lineup of Napalm isn't particularly bothered about doing something like that anyway.
No, I would assume not.
Which, what they're doing as it is now.
Yeah, they seem to do just fine for themselves. So.
Yeah.
All right, Bill. Well, it seems that's pretty much all the time we got with you today. So I want to thank you again for taking the time out and talking to us. And anything else you'd like to add?
Not really. Just hopefully see you when we're out there shortly.
Yeah, it'd be great to check you guys out, especially the lineup with the Decibel Magazine Tour. That's a really killer lineup. So again, thank you very much.
Pleasure.